This story was buried in haste, but now the signs of the cover-up have begun to surface. Imagine the scene: a silent dawn, a cloudy sky, and the muffled sound of shovels breaking the cold earth. A grave is violated in the oldest cemetery in the city. But what shocks is not the audacity of the crime, it's what was not found. The coffin was there, closed, intact, but empty. No sign of the body that should have been there, no official explanation, no functioning cameras that night. It's as if death was just a play, and this may be the beginning of a deadly secret that many have tried to bury, literally. What you are about to see is not a script for a series. It's real, and it has been swept under the rug with a coldness that even shocks those who have seen everything in the world of criminology. If you've made it this far, stay with me until the end, because what comes next may change the way you see what is called justice. And perhaps it will make you wonder, when the truth disappears, what remains for the victims? The records of the exhumation do not match. The cemetery staff vanished without a trace. The police claim there was a mistake, but refused to open a new investigation. Who was, after all, the man who should have been in that grave? A criminal linked to obscure networks? A key witness in an abuse of power case? Or just someone who knew too much about people who were too important? In the shadows of criminal psychology, this type of case is not isolated. There is a subtle yet frightening pattern: to silence elegantly, to disappear precisely, to bury without traces. It's the kind of manipulation that leaves no blood at the crime scene, but leaves wounds on those who try to find out what happened. And have you ever been through that? That feeling that something is wrong, but no one has the courage to say it out loud. Every detail you will learn now is based on erased documents, anonymous testimonies, and stalled investigations. And the most disturbing part, this person's name was for a time censored from the press. All of this leads us to a single question. Was the grave violated, or was it never occupied? Perhaps you think all of this is just a great coincidence. Perhaps you're wondering if it's really worth digging deep into a story that so many want to forget. But I guarantee you, the more we dig, the more the earth stinks. And sometimes the silence of the innocent is not a choice. It's the only way out. Now take a deep breath, because what comes next is even darker. And it may make you see the truth where there was once only versions. Maybe you're now feeling the same discomfort that many felt when they first heard this story. A mix of indignation, curiosity, and a certain void. The same void found in that silent grave. And if this topic makes sense to you, if at any point something here touched you, leave a comment about what has marked you the most so far. Sometimes a single shared opinion is the spark that reveals more than one imagines. And your voice could be the missing thread in this tangled silence. If you feel that this content captivates you, provokes you, makes you think, then hit the like button now. It may just seem like a click, but for us here, it's the fuel that keeps this work alive. It's a sign that we are on the right path. And more than that, it's what allows this story to reach more people, more restless minds, more voices that also refuse to accept shallow explanations. And if this is the kind of content you want, to keep following with deep investigations, serious questions, and that dense dive into criminal psychology, subscribe to the channel now. Here we don't provide ready-made answers, we provoke questions that many avoid. And that's the community we are building together, of people who think, feel, and are not satisfied with the obvious. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow. It's what makes this message go further. But now, hold on tight. Because if the ground has already shaken up to this point, what's coming next will make you look at the truth with different eyes, and perhaps even doubt those you never imagined. He was known by many names, but none of them carried certainty. For some, a silent predator, involved in crimes that left invisible marks and disbelieved victims. For others, a perfect scapegoat, someone who knew too much, was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and became too convenient to eliminate. The man who should have been in that grave was not just a name on a record. He was a key piece on a board where the truth has always been manipulated behind the scenes. For years, his face appeared in headlines. That confused more than clarified. Some said he led a perverse network of manipulation and psychological abuse. Others suggested that he had threatened to expose high-ranking individuals, protected by a wall of institutional silence. The official narrative was contradictory, unstable, and perhaps that's where the first revelation lies. When you want to hide a deadly secret, it's enough to shuffle versions until no one knows what to believe anymore. The curious thing is that he was never convicted of any crime. He was held in preventive detention, interrogated several times but always released due to lack of concrete evidence. Yet, public opinion had already judged and condemned him. The victims who accused him had similar stories, but many of them suddenly disappeared from the news, as if someone had pulled the brakes on the investigation with enough force to stifle any attempt at truth. And when the news of his death suddenly surfaced, everything seemed conveniently resolved. But those who lived with him tell a different story. Colleagues spoke of a paranoid man, always looking over his shoulder, as if he were being followed. There are reports that he left letters with veiled threats, cryptic messages, and even hidden videos, as if he foresaw that his end would come in a strange manner. This is not behavior of someone guilty trying to flee. It's the profile of someone carrying too heavy a burden, who has already understood that certain hidden truths can never be told openly. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding who he truly was is not just about the past, but about the impact this had on all the subsequent decisions. The way they constructed his image reveals much more about the system than about him. And when you begin to connect the dots, the narrative collapses. It's no longer about a man in an empty grave, it's about a structure disguised as justice, with pieces carefully moved to keep the illusion intact. If all this makes you think, comment, "There's something wrong with this story." I want to know how far you see the cracks in this plot. The news of his death arrived like a muffled whisper. No official announcement, no public funeral, no image of a body or any visual confirmation. What was seen was just a piece of paper, a death certificate with few lines and many blank spaces. The cause of death? Undetermined. The date? Vague. The location? A rest home that curiously closed its doors shortly afterward, and that alone would be enough to raise an alert. But what came next made everything even murkier. The coffin was sealed before any relative could make an identification. They claimed sanitary risks, special protocols, a series of bureaucratic excuses that, together, sounded more like a rehearsed script than real measures. No forensic examination was released. No official document was appended to the case. Just silence. The total absence of physical traces. And when absence becomes the main evidence, doubt transforms into a hidden truth that corrodes any official version. And the most astonishing thing is how no one contested. No newspaper investigated thoroughly. No authority demanded transparency. It was as if everyone had received the same invisible order: close this chapter. But why? What was there that needed to be erased so quickly? When a death is accepted without proof, the entire system reveals a flaw, or worse, a choice. A conscious decision to leave questions unanswered. And it is precisely at this point that the psychology of cover-up intertwines with the mentality of power. Because when those at the top want to eliminate the discomfort, elimination doesn't need to be physical. It's enough to erase records, seal information, close the coffin, and convince the world that everything has been resolved. But there is a type of impact that not even silence can contain, that of suspicion that spreads. Ordinary people begin to notice the gaps, the contradictions, the forgotten details, and from there a new journey begins, that of searching for meaning where only manipulated versions exist. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what this case lays bare is not just the disappearance of a body, but the disappearance of the very notion of truth. When someone's death becomes a poorly told piece of fiction, what does that say about who controls the narrative? And more, what happens to society when it accepts silence as an answer? If all this resonated with you, comment, "The truth was not buried." I want to know who else feels that this story is still alive. From the moment the first questions emerged, the attitude of the authorities was, at the very least, uncomfortable. Politicians avoided eye contact at press conferences, Forensic doctors refused interviews, and prosecutors limited themselves to repeating the same rehearsed phrase. There are not enough elements to reopen the case. But how could there be elements if the body was never shown? If the autopsy never existed? If the documentation presented has more holes than answers? The feeling is that everything was built in haste, as if the main goal was to close the case, not to understand it. Behind the scenes, those trying to investigate faced unexpected obstacles. Files disappeared, recordings went missing, and servers claimed ignorance about what was happening. A network of misunderstandings that, if isolated, could be attributed to chance. But when it repeats with every attempt to clarify the facts, the pattern speaks louder than any excuse. And this is where doubt transforms into suspicion. Because one thing is incompetence, quite another is the silent complicity that protects what cannot be revealed. The most unsettling aspect is that this omission seems to have been a collective decision, an unspoken pact among institutions that should be safeguarding the truth. But when the truth threatens larger structures, the decision made is not to investigate, it's to erase. And this mindset is dangerously effective. It silences under the cloak of legality, hides behind authority, and masks the absence of justice with the weight of positions and titles. It's the transformation of a system into a wall, and of each civil servant into an obedient piece. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when an entire apparatus moves to maintain silence, we need to start asking who is really being protected, and why. The impact goes far beyond a single case. It extends beyond the empty tomb or the forgotten victims. We are talking about a hidden truth that may have been buried to protect people with too much power and too little past. Understanding this is part of a journey that requires courage, critical thinking, and a willingness to see beyond the obvious. If this reflection resonates with you in any way, write in the comments. Silence is also a choice. I want to know, who else perceives the weight of all this? When the gaps are too large, the human mind tries to fill them with hypotheses, and in the case of this empty tomb, there's no shortage of theories, some absurd, others chillingly plausible. The most talked about among independent investigators is that of an orchestrated escape. Everything would have been prepared in advance: the false certificate, the sealed coffin, the absence of a wake, a meticulously executed plan to take someone off the map without raising suspicions, not for protection, but for convenience, so that he would no longer be a threat and would become a functional ghost. Another hypothesis points to a silent agreement, a pact between him and the system surrounding him. In exchange for confidential information, he would have received a new identity, a new country, and a life away from the spotlight, all planned in the background of rooms where decisions like this are made with surgical coldness. Those who live at this level of influence do not need courts. They need silence and pieces that know how to play the game. And he, perhaps, was one of those pieces. Maybe he said what they knew he knew, and that bought his disappearance. But there's an even denser theory, carrying a deep psychological weight, that he never existed as we thought, that the man presented to the public was a character created to distract, cover up, or even protect someone more powerful. A human shield. A biography constructed with real fragments and doses of fiction. This would explain why no one close to him really knew him, why there were no consistent records, and why his death, or supposed death, was shrouded in so much mystery. And if this theory seems exaggerated, it's because we have yet to consider how far some institutions are willing to go to maintain control of the narrative. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we make room to see these possibilities, what comes to light is not just a portrait of an isolated case. It is a transformation in how we perceive the limits between reality and construction, the line between what we are shown and what really happens behind the scenes. Understanding this changes everything. It changes the mindset, how we interpret decisions, and above all, how much we trust what is said to be official. Behind every convenient silence, there is a disguised intention. And when we look at this case through the lens of criminal psychology, it becomes hard to ignore a repeating pattern in the background of many institutions. The use of cover-up as a tool of containment. Sometimes the system lies, not to protect an individual but to preserve its own structure. When the truth threatens to cause instability, the instinct is to stifle it. And that's where the paradox comes in. In the name of order, disorder is manufactured. In the name of peace, noise is forcefully silenced. This type of mentality stems from the idea that the public could not handle certain revelations, that it's better to keep everything as it is, even if it requires manipulating evidence, disappearing bodies, and creating false narratives. The so-called social peace transforms into an excuse for grim decisions. And the impact of this is profound. People stop trusting in justice, feel that everything is manipulated, and gradually begin to accept that perhaps the truth will never come to light. This creates a vicious cycle of apathy and disbelief, precisely the environment that allows everything to remain the same. In practice, those behind this type of cover-up do not act alone. It's a network, a gear where each piece plays its part without knowing the whole. A prosecutor who avoids reopening a case, a doctor who omits a detail, a police officer who withholds a piece of evidence. Isolated, they seem to be human errors. But together, they reveal a systematic decision, a strategic choice to protect what really matters to those in power: reputation, power, and control. And in this game, the price of truth is almost always paid by those who have no voice. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what scares the most is not the crime itself, but the way it is erased from history. How time, allied with silence, transforms into a heavy veil that covers everything. But when we understand the mechanisms behind this, it's as if a key turns in our perception. We start to see beyond the surface, to distrust the official versions, to question what once seemed unquestionable. And this, however uncomfortable it may be, is the first step toward real transformation. What stands out most in this type of case isn't just the disappearing documents or the files that no longer exist, it's the heavy human silence. People who days earlier were ready to speak up, to denounce, suddenly change their tone. First they hesitate, then they disappear. Some give interviews marked by a distant gaze, vague statements, as if they knew something they could not say. Others simply vanish from the media, from records, from social networks. It's as if history sucks away everything that could compromise the official version, including voices. One of the closest witnesses to the alleged deceased once made firm statements, filled with details that matched covered-up points of the investigation. But soon after, she retracted everything. She said she was confused, that she misheard, that she preferred not to get involved. Interestingly, after this change, she moved abroad, with added protection and without any public explanation. These are signs that, in isolation, may seem coincidental. But together, they sketch a trajectory of intimidation, decisions made out, of fear, of a truth that terrifies even those who lived inside it. This type of behavior has a name in forensic psychology: induced silencing. It results from a combination of pressure, fear, and emotional strain. The witness does not need to be threatened with words. Sometimes it's enough for her to understand. Through glances, through indirect messages, through disappearances, around her, that speaking up has consequences. And it's at this point that the truth begins to seep through the cracks, like a mist that no one can hold anymore. Because the absence of speech also communicates, and in this case it communicates too much. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if silence has become a reflection of survival, it's because something large enough exists to cause this effect. Something that shakes invisible yet powerful structures. The impact of this choice, of each forced silence or each erased testimony, does not linger solely in this case. It spreads. It weakens collective trust, delegitimizes real voices, and turns justice into a stage without actors. And when everyone steps off the scene, who is left to tell what really happened? As time passes and the case is swallowed by institutional forgetfulness, there is a group that cannot move on: those who remain. Children, parents, siblings, friends of the victims who once believed the system would work, that justice would come, that there would be at least an explanation. But all they received was silence. The absence of answers has become a constant pain, and the impunity has morphed into an open wound that never heals. When justice fails, mourning does not end. It remains suspended, as if at any moment a hidden truth could drop from above and change everything. The indignation of these families goes far beyond anger. It's a mixture of frustration with disbelief, as if their pain didn't matter, as if everything had been decided by individuals who never looked into the eyes of a shattered mother, an orphaned child, someone who just wanted to understand what happened. And this type of emotional impact is profound. It shakes mental health, alters the way of seeing the world, destroys relationships, generates a void that no technical explanation can fill. Because when justice is denied, reality loses its axis. The truth becomes an invisible wound carried every day. And the cruelest part is realizing that, for these families, time doesn't ease their pain. It weighs them down. With each passing year without answers, with each failed attempt to reopen the case, the feeling of abandonment grows. It's as if everything has been deliberately swept under the rug, as if their pain is the price to pay to maintain the clean image of something much larger. This leads us to an uncomfortable reflection. How far does the value of truth go when it threatens to compromise reputations? And who pays the price when the decision is to hide instead of confront? Now I want to dive even deeper into this subject, because there's a collateral effect that few notice in these kinds of stories, the collective weakening of trust. When justice fails one, everyone feels it. The sense that we are disposable in the face of greater interests creates a type of social trauma that spreads quietly. The absence of answers in this case doesn't just silence those who have lost, it silences an entire society that slowly learns not to expect anything anymore. In any investigation that disturbs the wrong places, there's always a recurring pattern, and it never starts with great scandals, but with small silences. The journalist, who was about to publish a decisive article and suddenly resigned. The private investigator who claimed to be close to something big and left everything behind days later. The expert who mentioned inconsistencies in the documents and then vanished from social media without a trace. It's as if, one by one, everyone who got too close to the truth was swallowed by a shadow that no one can explain, but everyone feels. These retreats are not merely resignations. They bear the marks of something deeper, more structural. Because when professionals who thrive on pursuing truths decide to stop, it's not due to a lack of evidence, it's due to an excess of consequences. The stories circulating behind the scenes speak of veiled pressures, strange phone calls, unexpected visits. Nothing official, nothing easily provable. But all of this leaves signs. Suspicious glances, abrupt changes in behavior, changes of country. And slowly, that map of connections that was about to reveal a major transformation fades away. What this shows us is that in certain situations, the truth becomes too dangerous to circulate freely. It ceases to be a goal and becomes a risk. And then, those who try to unearth what has been buried with that empty coffin realize that the search for truth comes at a high cost, higher than many are willing to pay. It's not just about fear, though that exists. It's about understanding that certain decisions have already been made behind the scenes, and confronting them is like running headlong into an invisible, impenetrable wall. Now I want to delve even deeper into this matter, because when we start to see that even those with preparation, skill and experience prefer to retreat, an inevitable question arises. What is so grave behind this story? What kind of revelation can silence so many voices at once? We are no longer just talking about individual crimes or ethical failings. We're talking about a machinery seemingly bent on erasing any trace of truth. And in this scenario, courage becomes an act of resistance, and silence a language with its own meaning. Reaching this point is like trying to assemble a puzzle where, the more pieces you fit together, the more distorted the image seems. And perhaps that's the most disturbing part, not knowing whether we are revealing a meticulously crafted plan or whether we are seeing patterns where only chaos exists. The human mind is a powerful machine of connections, and when it comes to unresolved mysteries, it cannot settle for emptiness. It fills in the gaps, it creates meaning. But what if, this time, the meaning we create is more real than the official version? Look, the sequence of events, the disappearance of the body, the silent witnesses, the investigators who backed down, all of this combined forms a trail that, at the very least, deserves suspicion. And it's here that the question hits hard. Are we truly entering a labyrinth of conspiracy, with several layers hidden behind familiar faces? Or is all of this just our way of trying to digest a reality that is too messy, where chance, negligence, and lack of transparency blend in an indigestible stew? Because there's a point in this journey where everything seems to make sense, and at the same time nothing makes sense. And it's at this point that we need to pause and think, what is more frightening? The possibility of an entire system covering up something monstrous, or the idea that no one is in control, and the truth has been consumed by negligence and incompetence. There are times it seems like conspiracy theory, but there are times when the coldness of the facts makes even the most skeptical scratch their heads. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because behind all of this, behind the doubts, the silences, the versions, there's one thing that never changes: the human desire to understand, to not be made a fool, to not accept any story just because someone in a high position said it was this way and that's final. And this desire is what drives this entire conversation. It's what makes this journey so intense, so alive, so real, because even without all the evidence, we feel deep down that there's something amiss in this tale. If you've made it this far, it's because this topic has resonated with you in some way. And that says a lot. In this sea of shallow stories and ready-made answers, diving into something so dense and layered isn't for everyone. So if this content made you think, if it gave you new perspectives, or simply left you with that feeling that there's still more to discover, subscribe to the channel. It's what keeps this conversation alive and helps us continue bringing topics that truly provoke. Feel free to leave the phrase "I'm with you until the end" in the comments. That way I'll know who really walked alongside me until the last second, and who is ready to keep uncovering these uncomfortable truths by my side. And if this video made sense to you, please give it a like. It's just a small gesture, but it helps spread this kind of reflection to more people who, like you, also feel that something is wrong and being hidden out there. Now you can also check out the complete playlist with other stories, but if you're interested in seeing the story of a victim whose scent returned at the moment of their execution, then this is the video for you. Click and continue with me over there, because other stories are still far from over.